we talk about commons, and we talk about squares and plazas, and we talk about malls, we talk about airports, and we as individuals interact with those, each one of these different experiences. But the objective reality is the same of all of these things. It's how we interact with them that makes it different for us. It's our interaction with them that gives rise to the experience that we take away. And I'm just wondering, with materials, with technology, with spaces, and with these new ideas about the body, if we might be close to, or are we there already, where we can create personalized experience for passengers through airports. Any thoughts on that? No takers.
I think we, in a way, we sort of already have. Everybody experiences an airport slightly differently. I'm not sure what you mean by personalized experience.
Well, so for example, let me give you a couple of examples. Take the art piece. Through technology, that piece of art is not going to respond the same way for just anybody. It'll respond differently for you. It'll respond differently and it'll respond differently with respect to the kinds of colors you see and shapes, depending on who you are, because of, let's say, mass data analytics and the ability to understand a little bit more about the individual passenger. That kind of idea.
Well, then I have no idea. Bratton's the one who knows.
Yeah, I don't think that's a question that would be, well, that phenomenon is going to occur in a lot of places. Airports are not going to be unique in that sense. I guess the question that I would further it by saying because that's going to happen. It's going to happen in stores. It's going to happen in theme parks, probably first. It will happen perhaps even in your home. But I think the question to ask is, the way I would think about it is that what would be unique about that kind of personalized experience for an airport? How would it be different in an airport than it would be in a shopping mall, or I mean a big box store? How could it be different? What is it about an airport that demands a different kind of personalized experience?
And it might not. It might not be different. As a matter of fact, you're right. I mean, a lot of things that we experience at airports, we experience in other venues.
But I would say yes. I think we're going to get to that. Already we are that. I mean, everybody's personalizing with their headphones and their iPads and their phone. I mean, but at the same time, I'm, for example, I don't like talking to strangers that much. But in airports, you build a sense of solidarity when things go wrong. There's something interesting about the individual versus the collective. And one of the things I find potentially interesting about these things is these moments in which we are forced to be collective. Through immigration, through security, and so on, and you end up having very bizarre conversations that you will not have ever in your life. So I think there is an opportunity to, again, I keep going with this of the captive audience. To me, it's one of the most interesting things in the world of architecture. I think for the longest time, in particular, for sure, since modernism, architecture has been the business of people. And I think there is an interesting idea to people from an audience. Of course, an audience is made out of people, but it's a different notion. And I think part of the problem is to accept that the physicality of the architectural engineer component, despite our best effort, will remain that. And the interface of the personalization to these devices will keep growing and changing. But still there is an extraordinary opportunity in terms of the physical. So when I'm talking about the possibility of personalization, I actually talking even the opportunity to change things that we usually don't like. I think we're all frustrated with certain things about contemporary culture and so on. But the question is, what are we offering when you're there? Like again, imagine if we can start thinking that an airport operates more like a park, or an airport operates more like a beach, or an airport, not that you're going to put sun in the ground. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the opportunities in terms of you're going to be there for and actually it's interesting because one would argue as technology evolves, everything will get shorter, and eventually flights will get to be shorter because planes and so on. But because security and whatever, the airport experience is getting longer. It used to be 1 hour was enough for a domestic flight. Now in 1 hour, you're going to cut it tight if you are not pre-approved security and so on. So in a way, it's becoming longer. Delays are becoming more and more an issue because weather patterns and all that, but also technology and the kind of an obsolete air navigation control system don't allow the airport to be efficient too, this is the other part, to be fair, like airports and airport operators always take a lot of bad press because other things that's not really in the hands of the airports. I mean, like our controller system in the air is completely obsolete, and that doesn't allow to a much more efficient way of takeoff and landing and so on. And I don't know how much of that you guys know, but it's one of the major issues of delays and so on. It's not just weather and mechanical failure. So, but nevertheless, we are in that territory in which that time has becoming longer again. So it's not exactly the same experience on the 50 and the 60, but in terms of time, we're going backwards and not forwards. And this is the amount of time that we spend in the airport. So since we have that, and we have that opportunity, what else can we operate? Like now we have iPads and all that, but I always remember 7, 8 years ago when this was the Wi-Fi and the cellular network was not. I always wondered why airports don't have little movie theater that you can show short films of 15, 20 minutes. There was all this, or why don't you have opportunities for local artists or performers? I always thought, why these are much more not a social space? Why we don't do those things? And of course there's security and all that, but we figured out how to get employees of the shops. So what we have not offered, like I travel with my kids a lot, I'm there, I really don't like them to spend 5 hours watching iPad. But what else they can do when we're in the airport? Either that, or they're driving me crazy to buy them toys. Those are the two scenarios if you're traveling with kids. No, so I'm wondering why we don't treat it as part of the city. Why we don't operate in an airport in the same way. Like we will not allow to put a public park that is full of stores. I mean, again, I'm not asking for anything very strange. I'm talking about to really reinvent certain things that is just common sense and bring back some architectural quality that goes beyond just efficiency. Don't get me wrong, the efficiency, it has to be there. I want to go faster to an airport. I mean, the perfect airline for me would be one that they put me to sleep and wake me up when I land. I would love that. They pick me in my house, they inject me, and I wake up in London. I'll pay fortune for that. Until that happens,
there you go. There's the personalization. You got it.
Yeah. Until we get there, give me the qualities I get in a restaurant, in a bar, in a park, in other things. Since I'm going to spend a huge amount of time of my life in it. And by the way, even airlines, where they suck, more often than not, they're improving the in-flight experience. Not the space, but in terms of what the service that they're giving you is getting better. Anyway, sorry, I probably didn't answer your...
It seems like it's a perfect place for it because, as you said, it's a captive audience. And you have a captive audience from incredibly diverse cultures trying to have maybe some meaning to the time that they spend within the airport. So it could be used to connect people. Maybe it's about interfacing between people of different cultures or different languages. Maybe it's, I don't know, but I mean, for me, it seems like it's the perfect laboratory for that kind of a project, the first place you could try it, because you really do have an incredibly controlled environment. People can't escape. Interlocutors can't interrupt what's going on. You could get a mass of people utilizing the same kind of technology and doing it in a space and in an environment where they're not pressed for time. They're pressed for time because, yeah, they got to get their flight, but they're not. There's 45 minutes between when I cross that gate and when I got to get in line to start boarding. So how are we going to entertain them, or how are we going to? And I don't like that word, but what kind of experience are we going to give them? It seems like the perfect opportunity to do that, as opposed to, say, doing it in a public park or something where you've got people with very different expectations coming to the space. The airport, everybody's kind of got the same expectation. Get to that gate, get on that plane. In the meantime, I'm open for anything.
Just to follow up on what the journalist is talking about, to me it goes back to the question of freedom. And right now we don't have freedom. I think the whole process is very confined, it's very prescribed. And until we get to the moment that technology improves and takes place in the airport, we'll never feel really free and spontaneous to kind of enjoy the park, to enjoy these other amenities. To the question of freedom. And right now we don't have the freedom. I think the whole process is very confined, it's very prescribed. And until we get to the moment that technology improves and takes place in the airport, we'll never feel really free and spontaneous to kind of enjoy the park, to enjoy these other amenities. Or being able to take a different flight if we miss it. And rather than this, right now it creates a lot of stress and anxiety that we have to meet all the checkpoints as we go through it. So to me, until this change is not going to make place, then I feel like the idea of freedom is and really having a personal experience is not really going to happen.
All good points. Audience, questions?
Hi, thanks. I'd like to just build on your question because I think it's a really important one. How can we provide more individual experiences for passengers? And this is such a pressing issue with so many airports approaching or going across the 100 million passenger threshold. I think the challenge that I see right now is that when we think about how to address this, most of the answers are technology. Meaning, how can technology create a more personalized experience at the airport? And I have a couple of problems with that. One is that a lot of the technologies that are being offered are totally untested. And so the question is, the airport is such a complicated environment, is that a place that we want to be throwing in all these things that haven't proven themselves elsewhere? And the second question is, maybe we need to take a step back and think a little bit more simply in terms of, and also more cheaply, quite frankly, in terms of thinking what kind of design changes we can make in terms of amenities. And so this is my question maybe to the panel, is, for example, when I interview Chinese passengers, one of the things that come up over and over again is they say, when I get off the plane, what I want is hot boiling water. Because I'm traveling with tea, and I want a cup of tea. They bring their own tea with them. And some airports, the successful airports know that, and they've started to install boiling water stations. Right? That's not something that maybe if you're not from China or from different cultural contexts you really ever think about. But it is points towards this idea that there are many different types of people traveling through the airport. So, posing the question to the architects, what can we do, what you call programmatically, what other people might call in terms of amenities, what kinds of ideas could we brainstorm here right now to think about that's missing from the airport area now that you would put into it?
I will start with the basics, which is, differentiation of class, unfortunately, in capitalist society is a given, but in airports, it gets exposed to a whole other level. Like you fly in first class or concierge service, whatever, your life is pretty okay. You fly in coach, your life sucks beyond belief. So I will start with the basics. Get all the facilities that the club have and put it open to the public. If we're going for simple, cheap solution, do that. Put fresh fruit bowls, put water for everybody, put showers for everybody. No, don't make it free if you want, charge $1. I don't know. Start with the basics. Let's start to progress. I mean, let's don't be so aggressive in the classification of social status when it comes to that. I mean, basic stuff. After that, I think then we need to think a whole other thing, which I don't know. I mean, I'm not arguing for throwing technology. I'm arguing actually to rethink the possibility of evolution or mutation of the type. I mean, again, I agree with you that the machinery and the infrastructure and airport is a difficult one. The space is not. It's a gigantic warehouse with a bunch of kiosks. It's not really complex at the architectural level. Whoever tells you that is lying. I understand for moving people, security, and all that, but that's infrastructure. That's not a architectural design problem, really. So the experience of it, at least what I'm talking about, the experience actually, I don't think it requires cutting-edge technology. I was talking about that as possible scenarios, but I think you can do simple, like, for a start, don't do the floor beige. Don't put carpet. Don't put ugly carpet. Don't put ugly chairs. Don't put ugly desks. Don't put people in ugly uniforms. This is basic stuff. There is a fundamental difference, and there is a fundamental difference between, let's say, American navigation culture and other one. If you compare American Airlines, let's say, Admiral class versus British Airways Club, it's a world of difference how they understand the experience of flying. In American, everything is efficient, it's beige, everything is working, and so on. British is a little bit more funky, quirky, more design, more British, more eccentric. So it starts with those things. I mean, I really don't think it's a mystery. I think it's how we bring the things that we appreciate in cities. There's a reason why we like more cities than others. We have to do with those things. So, and the last thing is something that Mario was talking about, is the notion of how you bring the local culture into it. Like, I have this game with my oldest daughter. I travel a lot, so she marks in the map every city in every country I've been. And we have this rule that changing planes doesn't count. Like if I was in Singapore for 6 hours changing plane, doesn't count. I wasn't in Singapore.
Yeah.
But it would be nice that since I'm 6 hours in Singapore, that Singapore brings something in, so I can count that. So, but I'm joking. I mean, we've been in many places that you're not there, but there is an opportunity there. So I'm not really talking for rocket science. I'm talking basic stuff. But in terms of amenities, I would start with a simple idea. Put everything that you have in the private clubs available for everybody.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that there's always a tendency to try to throw technology at a place in order to, sort of transform it. But I think that it warrants looking at it from a more fundamental level. I think you have to chip away at the programmatic conventions of an airport. And Kurt Ventris could probably talk about this, why that might be difficult, but imagine, and this is starting to change, but imagine airports that have hotels, airports that have gardens, that actually have trees and actually have grass, that are open to the sky. How many airports have you been in when you can be behind the security line and you can actually walk in a park and touch a tree? Those kinds of fundamental challenges to the conventions, I think, are more interesting than just layering another technological system or gizmo on top of it.
And it's not that expensive.
And it's not as expensive.
Anyone else? Any other questions? So let me go. Did you have a question?
Running from the back with a question.
Okay, come on in.
I just wanted to, Ben, it's great to hear you speak again, and all of you. Just one of the things that we're never at. So my name is Terrence Young. I'm a design principal at Gensler. So where's Kurt? Direct competitor. Nice job. I love your work. So the question is the people that design these spaces are never at a loss for inspiration, nor are we anti-nature. The real question is not can we put a tree in there, but can we get somebody to take care of that tree, to water the tree? Can we keep the kids from taking the rocks out of the tree and throwing them around, right? It's never really an issue of can we get a tree in there. The question is what are the policies, what is the labor policy at the airport? How do we get that stuff in there? In New Zealand, we were challenged to actually get as much authentic live stuff in the airport as possible until you realize that you can't grow stuff inside, even with grow lights, to the level of robustness. It just doesn't happen, right? All the glazing in the skylights filters out the UV that the plants need to grow. So maybe you take the plants outside, from the air side, outside to grow and bring them back inside, except that it's a secure facility for an international. So once you take the plants outside, you can't bring them back inside. You actually have to destroy them, right? So there are the real issues about infestation, bugs. All the bamboo forests in SFO were decimated because they didn't have wind inside the airport to grow robustly, and they were destroyed by beetles, right? So I agree with everything you said, but there are the harsh realities of actually trying to build force inside, or crack a building open to get exterior space.
But maybe that's where that's where we apply technology. It's not about making a more advanced VR headset or a more immersive tunnel with responsive graphics. It's about applying technologies, about environmental control, so that we can widen the environmental palette within the airport itself.
You're trying to create authenticity, using the technique to create authenticity, which I
Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know if I would call it authentic because it's completely manufactured, it's completely controlled, but sure, I mean, would it be more authentic if we were to engineer a chaparral hillside inside of LAX? Arguably, yeah. Depending upon your definition of authenticity.
Is that it? Okay, all right. So thank you very much, panelists. Great discussion.